All right, so you want to be a printed circuit board assembler, huh? And you've got an interview coming up. Well, you've come to the right place. Today, we're going to help you nail that interview.
That's right. We're going to break down some common questions you might get asked.
Yeah, so you can walk in there feeling confident and ready to impress.
But remember, it's not just about memorizing answers.
Right.
It's really about showing them you understand the world of PCB assembly.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Our listener sent over some sample questions. A great place to start.
Yeah, let's start with this one. Can you describe your experience with surface mount technology assembly?
Ooh, SMT. That's a big one. I bet they ask that in almost every PCB assembler interview.
Yeah, pretty much. They want to
Yeah.
make sure you've got the skills. SMT is everywhere in electronics these days.
So how should our listener answer this question? I mean, should they just list every project they've ever worked on?
No, not quite. It's more about highlighting the depth of your experience. Talk about the different types of SMT components you've worked with, the equipment you've used.
Oh, like pick-and-place machines, reflow ovens, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And any specialized techniques you've mastered, like if you've done double-sided assembly or BGA components.
Right, because that shows you can handle those more complex tasks.
Exactly. And here's where a tool like RoleCatcher can be really helpful. It analyzes the job description and picks up on keywords the employer is looking for.
Oh, that's interesting. So if they specifically mention like fine pitch components or automated optical inspection in the job description,
To emphasize those aspects of your experience in your answer.
smart. Okay, so what about follow-up questions? What if they dig a little deeper?
Oh, they'll definitely dig deeper. They might ask something like, tell me about a time you faced a challenge during SMT assembly and how you overcame it.
Ah, the classic tell me about a time question. It's all about problem solving.
Exactly. So have a good example ready. Maybe a time you had to troubleshoot a tricky soldering issue or figure out a workaround for a component shortage.
And walks them through your thought process.
Mm.
Show them you can think on your feet.
Right. What steps did you take? What tools or techniques did you use? And how did you ultimately solve the problem?
Makes sense. Okay, moving on to question number 2. How do you ensure the quality of assembled PCBs?
Okay, now this is a big one. Quality is absolutely crucial in PCB assembly.
It's not just about knowing how to use a magnifying glass, right?
Nope, not at all. They want to know you understand that quality is built into every step of the process.
So what are some key points our listeners should touch on?
We'll start with the basics. Visual inspection, you got to make sure those components are placed correctly, no solder bridges, all that good stuff.
Right, but it goes beyond just looking at it, right?
Exactly. Talk about functional testing. How do you actually make sure the board works as intended? Do you use any automated testing equipment?
Yeah, like in-circuit testing or functional testers.
Exactly. And don't forget to mention industry standards, like IPCA 610.
Showing you're familiar with those standards shows you're serious about quality.
It really does.
Uh,
And it's interesting because as you progress in your career as a PCB assembler, you might even be involved in developing or refining those quality control processes.
Oh, that's a good point. It's not just about following the rules, it's about understanding why those rules are there and how to improve them.
Right. Okay, now let's move on to question 3. This one's more of a knowledge check. Can you explain the difference between through-hole and surface mount technology assembly?
All right, back to basics, but it's a fundamental concept, right?
Hey, definitely. You got to be able to explain this clearly and concisely.
So what are the key differences?
Well, the biggest difference is how the components are mounted on the board. With through-hole technology, the components have leads that actually go through the board, so you have to drill holes.
Yeah, and then you solder them on the other side.
Right. But with surface mount technology, those components sit right on the surface of the board. No need for drilling.
And that allows for much higher component density, which is super important for smaller, more complex devices.
Exactly. And don't forget to mention the pros and cons of each technique.
Like through-hole might be more robust for certain applications, like in high vibration environments, right?
Yeah. While SMT allows for more miniaturization, they might even ask you which technique is more suitable for certain situations.
You really have to understand the why behind the differences.
Precisely. Okay, let's tackle question 4. How do you handle component shortages during PCB assembly?
Ah, the dreaded component shortage. It's a nightmare.
It happens, unfortunately, but it's a great opportunity to show your problem-solving skills.
So how should our listener approach this question?
Well, first, you want to demonstrate you're proactive. What steps do you take to identify alternative sources for those missing components?
Do you use any online databases? Contact suppliers directly?
Exactly. Show them you're resourceful. And don't forget about communication.
Right. Keep the team informed, explain the situation, and present potential solutions.
Yeah, they want to see that you're a team player who can handle those curveballs.
And RoleCatcher can actually help you here too, right?
Absolutely. It
Oh,
analyzes your answer and gives you feedback on whether you're hitting those key points the employer is looking for.
like, are you demonstrating initiative, problem solving,
Right.
teamwork?
Exactly. It's like having a coach in your corner, making sure you're putting your best foot forward.
Okay, I love that. Let's move on to a more technical question. Can you explain the purpose of conformal coding in PCB assembly?
Conformal coding. It's all about protection.
Right. Shielding that delicate circuitry from all those nasty things in the environment?
Exactly. Things like moisture, dust, chemicals, even extreme temperatures.
So our listeners should clearly explain that protective function. Maybe mention the different types of coatings too.
Yeah, like acrylic, epoxy, silicone. There are a bunch of options out there.
And they all have their pros and cons, depending on the application, right?
Absolutely. And, as you gain experience and move into more senior roles, you might even be responsible for choosing the right type of coating for a specific product or environment.
Oh, that's interesting. So demonstrating that knowledge can definitely give you an edge.
All right, let's move on to question 6. How do you troubleshoot and resolve assembly problems during PCB assembly?
Okay, this is where your experience really shines. Everybody makes mistakes, but it's how you handle those mistakes that matters.
Right. They want to see that you have a systematic approach to troubleshooting.
So walk them through your process. What's the first thing you do when you notice a problem?
Start with visual inspection, of course, but then, maybe you grab your multimeter and start checking for continuity, shorts, that kind of thing.
Right. Mention any diagnostic tools you're familiar with, like oscilloscopes or logic analyzers.
Exactly. And don't just name the tools, explain how you use them. What are you looking for? How do you interpret those readings?
And it's always helpful to have a specific example ready, a time when you successfully diagnosed and solved a tricky problem.
Oh, absolutely. Walk them through your thought process, how you narrowed down the possibilities, and ultimately found the solution.
And RoleCatcher can help you practice that troubleshooting story, right?
Yeah.
Make sure it's clear and concise and really highlights your skills.
Yeah, it's like having a mock interview with an AI coach. Okay, question 7. Can you describe your experience with hand soldering techniques?
All right. Hand soldering, the foundation of it all.
You got it. Even with all the automation out there, hand soldering is still super important.
There are always those situations where you need a steady hand and a precise touch.
Exactly. So talk about your experience with different soldering irons, different types of solder.
Like lead-free solder versus leaded solder.
Yeah. And different techniques like through-hole soldering, surface mount soldering, maybe even drag soldering or reflow soldering.
And if you've worked on projects with those really tiny, delicate components, definitely mention that.
It shows you've got the skills to handle the tough stuff.
And RoleCatcher's Career Guide actually has a whole section on soldering techniques.
Oh, it's a great resource for brushing up on your knowledge or learning some new tricks.
Okay, last question for today. How do you maintain an organized and clean work area during PCB assembly?
This might seem like a simple question, but it's really important. A clean workspace equals quality work,
Absolutely. It's about safety, efficiency, and professionalism.
Exactly. So talk about your organizational methods. How do you keep your tools and components in order?
Do you have a system for managing your workflow so you don't have clutter everywhere?
Yeah. And what about safety protocols? Like, do you use ESD mats? Label your tools?
Those little details can really make a difference.
They really do. And, a potential follow-up question here could be, have you ever had a situation where a messy workspace caused a problem?
Interesting. So they're not just looking for someone who's tidy, they're looking for someone who understands the impact of a clean workspace.
Right. Have an example ready, maybe a time when clutter led to a mistake and how you learn from that experience.
Great advice. Okay, wow, we just covered a lot of ground. 8 key interview questions and even some potential follow-up questions.
We just scratched the surface.
And in the next part, we'll explore how RoleCatcher can help you tailor your answers even further, using AI to really make a lasting impression. So stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll be right back. Welcome back. We just talked about some common questions you'll hear in a printed circuit board assembler interview. Now, how can RoleCatcher help you fine-tune those answers?
Well, one thing that's really cool about RoleCatcher is that it digs into those job descriptions, those long lists of requirements, and it pulls out the key skills and keywords.
Ah, it's like it gives you a cheat sheet almost.
Yeah, exactly. It tells you what the employers are really looking for.
And that helps you tailor your answers, right? So you're
Yeah.
speaking their language.
Exactly. So let's say, I don't know, the job description says they're looking for experience with BGA components or automated optical inspection.
Right, right.
RoleCatcher would pick up on those terms and then suggest ways to work them into your answers.
So you're not just like making things up or pretending to be someone you're not. You're just highlighting the relevant parts of your experience.
Exactly. You're putting your best foot forward.
I like that. So it's like this. You already have the skills and the experience.
Right.
RoleCatcher just helps you present them in a way that really clicks with what the employer is looking for.
That makes so much sense. I love it. It takes out all that guesswork,
Yeah.
Like, am I saying the right things?
And you know what else is cool? It goes beyond just keywords. RoleCatcher actually uses AI to analyze your entire response to those interview questions.
Oh, wow. So what does it do? Give you a grade?
Kind of. It gives you feedback, like, is your answer clear and concise? Did you miss any important details? Are you rambling on too long?
So it's like having a mock interview with an AI coach.
Basically. It helps you refine your communication style so you sound confident and prepared.
I love that. I could really use that kind of feedback, actually.
And remember those certifications we talked about earlier, like IPCA 610?
Oh, yeah, those are important.
RoleCatcher's Career Guide has a whole section on those, too.
Really?
It tells you which certifications are most valuable for different PCB assembler roles.
Oh, that's helpful.
So if you're just starting out, you might focus on the entry-level certifications.
Right, the basics.
But then as you gain experience and aim for more senior roles, well, you might need those more advanced specialized certifications.
I see. So RoleCatcher helps you plan your career path, too.
Exactly. Okay, now let's take a step back and think about the big picture.
Okay.
The career path of a printed circuit board assembler.
Right, right.
RoleCatcher's Career Guide goes deep into this. It breaks down the typical responsibilities at each stage, from entry-level to senior positions.
Well, that's cool. So you can see where you might be headed in your career.
Absolutely. It's like, think about it. At the entry level, you're mostly focused on those basic assembly techniques.
Right. Following instructions, working with more experienced assemblers.
Exactly. It's all about building that foundation.
Right. Learning the ropes.
But then, as you gain experience, you might move into a junior role. You'll start taking on more responsibility.
Like operating more complex equipment.
Yeah, maybe even troubleshooting some of those basic assembly problems.
So you're not just following instructions anymore. You're actually thinking about the process.
Right. You're making decisions, solving problems. And then if you keep moving up that career ladder, you might find yourself leading a team of assemblers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Maybe mentoring those junior assemblers.
Right. Helping them out.
Or you might work more closely with the engineers,
Yeah.
helping them improve the assembly processes or even design new PCBs.
Well, that's fascinating. So there's like a lot of different directions you could go.
Assemblely. And the career guide even talks about specializations within PCB assembly.
Specializations. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, like some assemblers become experts in a particular type of assembly, surface mount technology or through-hole technology. Others might focus more on quality control or process optimization.
So you can really carve out your own niche in this field.
Exactly. And the career guide can help you figure out which path best aligns with your interests and your skills.
It's like having a personal career counselor in your pocket
I know, right? It's all about finding the right job for you.
and building a career that you actually enjoy. That's great.
So RoleCatcher isn't just about acing that interview.
Right. It's about your entire career journey.
It gives you the knowledge and the insights to succeed in the world of PCB assembly.
This has been so helpful. I feel like I have a much better understanding of what it takes to be a PCB assembler.
I'm glad to hear that. So in the last part, we'll give you some final tips for really making a memorable impression in that interview.
Okay, I can't wait. Welcome back. So we've talked about how to answer those common interview questions.
And how RoleCatcher can help you refine your responses.
Right. But now it's time to go beyond the technical stuff.
Yeah, to really make a lasting impression.
So how do you do that? How do you show them who you are, not just what you know?
Well, one thing you can do is talk about what sparked your interest in electronics,
Like, what got you excited about this field in the first place?
Exactly. Was there a childhood project that really hooked you, a teacher who inspired you?
Oh, that's a good idea. It shows you're not just looking for any job.
Right. You're passionate about this specific field.
And don't forget to ask questions, too.
Oh, yeah. Asking thoughtful questions is huge. It shows you're engaged, you've done your research.
Like, what kind of questions?
Well, you could ask about the company culture, or their commitment to innovation.
Interesting.
Maybe ask about the specific projects you'd be working on if you get the job.
Oh, yeah. That shows you're really thinking about the role.
And maybe they're known for using some cool, cutting-edge technology, or they have a strong focus on sustainability. Whatever it is, show them you've gone beyond just reading the job description.
It's about turning that interview into a conversation, not just a Q&A.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of a simple thank you note.
Oh, you mean after the interview?
Yeah, it's a nice touch, and it keeps you top of mind.
And it's a chance to reiterate something you discussed, or maybe ask a follow-up question.
Right, and hey, even if this particular interview doesn't work out,
You mean if you don't get the job?
yeah, even then, it's still valuable experience. Every interview helps you get better.
That's so true. You learn something every time.
So go into that interview with confidence. Be yourself, let your enthusiasm show.
And good luck. I'm sure you're going to do great.
And remember, RoleCatcher is there to help you every step of the way, from prepping for those tough questions to figuring out your next career move.
It's an amazing resource. All right, that's a wrap for our deep dive on printed circuit board assembler interview prep.
We hope you found it helpful.
And we wish you all the best in your job search.
Until next time.
See you then.